It's more dramatic that way.
All right. Hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast. I am Michael, and tonight we are here for another rousing rendition of Detention live. And my extra special guest tonight is Shane. Can't pronounce the last name. Mordenkaniens. Shane, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I wouldn't ask you to pronounce my last name if you tried.
I couldn't even spell it, and you sent me the spelling in an email. So
yeah, it's pronounced Smith.
Oh, okay. You know, some of the Scandinavian languages, they do translate kind of interestingly.
Yeah, exactly.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Detention is our weekly, more or less, talk show. It's sort of semi-structured around some stuff, but more or less, it's just us chatting about some stupid stuff for a while. But we're going to talk about some old campaigns. We're going to talk about what we've been up to. We're going to talk about a monster, maybe some interesting ways that you can use it, or we've used it in the past. We're going to do some question and answering if we have any people in chat that want to ask any questions. And welcome Targris and New York Tater, two of our regulars. Nice to see you back. So for anyone who doesn't know you, Shane, what's the skinny on Shane Smith?
So Shane Viskauskas. I am one of the co-hosts of the Total Party Thrill podcast, which is a RPG discussion podcast modeled, frankly, after the RPG Academy.
But done better, like so many more.
Well, that's up to debate, but it's certainly using your old equipment.
Yeah. I sometimes regret that.
You know what? I appreciate it every time we record. Every time we have to do remote recording, I'm like, but if only we could use our good setup. But then I also have appeared on a few different RPG Academy streams and podcasts, as well as some other shows. And I wrote an RPG once.
Yeah, Reckon and Racing.
Reckon is Racing.
Oh, Reckon is Racing, sorry.
Yeah, it's a NASCAR-inspired or a fiasco-inspired NASCAR RPG.
You also are, the Mordenkaniens comes from your blog originally, right?
Yeah, that's very occasionally updated. Updated just often enough to keep me with a Gen Con badge.
So, again, and I've tried to explain this to some people on occasion. The reason I'm a podcaster is because it takes too damn long to write stuff out.
You know, you say that, but then you prepare show notes, and it all goes down the drain anyway.
See, we don't do that.
Yeah, well, there's something to that.
Yeah, we're all off the cuff here. Preparation is for people who are better than us. But yeah, so that's actually how I guess we first started crossing paths. You were, we hooked up on Twitter, chatted a little bit. You had a couple articles, and I don't know, but just at some point, I think you offered to host.
I begged to be on the show.
Okay, all right. I was trying to say it nicer than that. So
yeah, no, that's fair. But I'm not a proud man.
But I am honored to count you among my internet friends. I think you and Ishan do great work. I think Total Party Thrill is an excellent podcast. I'm not as into the Warhammer.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
Yeah, I love the Eberron because I'm all about the Eberron. But the Warhammer stuff just doesn't quite pull me in. But anyone who has not yet listened to Total Party Thrill, absolutely you need to. They are in the small club of beaten by Ken and Robin for an innie.
Yeah, the ever-expanding club, actually. Every year, a few more join the fraternity.
Yes. So I know last year, this is how... I don't want to use the word petty, but I think that's the right word to use. So I went back and looked from the history of the Innies, how many shows have been nominated twice in a row and got nothing either time. And we're in a semi-exclusive club. I think there's 4 other shows in the 8 years the Innies have been running that have had that honor. So maybe if we're 3 in a row, we're the first ones. We're the only ones, unless someone else who's done it twice before.
I am honored to be amongst podcast royalty.
Again, 2 and out. Yeah, so we submitted again. So I'm pretty excited. Usually the announcements are made in early July, so we got about a month before we'll know who was nominated and if I have to change my Friday schedules again. So we'll see. But let's go ahead and get into the show proper. So the first thing we start with every night is Shane. What are you drinking?
I am drinking passion fruit LaCroix.
Oh, okay.
I ran out of pamplemousse.
I'm drinking water out of my Marvel Civil War commemorative cup.
Oh, nice. Did that come from a movie theater?
Yes, it did.
Nice.
And it's tall, but it's really not as wide as some of the others, and it's annoying because it's actually too tall to sit into the refrigerator. So like you can't just put it in there and walk away. So you have to sit there and hold it.
Yeah.
Bad design on somebody's part.
Yeah, terrible. It's almost like it was designed for a movie theater where they're trying to bilk you for every dollar.
Yeah. I mean, and I know it. I don't have any like they're not fooling me, but I'm like, yeah, I want that big tub and I want that cup. So yeah, I'm the perfect consumer for Marvel because I'm going to buy every ticket every time and go back and see it multiple times. But anyway, so the first thing we actually do here on the show is what we call extracurricular, and that's where we talk about what we've been up to the last couple weeks or so. You and I haven't had a lot of time to chat, so there's actually a lot we could catch up on. It doesn't have to be RPG related, but often it is. But it could be movies, TV, songs, anything in your life that you feel like sharing with myself and the audience. So Shane, what you been up to, buddy?
I started painting minis again for the first time since middle school.
Oh, and how's that going?
Very mediocrely.
Oh, okay.
I'm quietly proud of what I have done, but that's only because I was very, very bad the last time I painted minis. So I've made moderate improvements. Yeah, exactly. Like I learned what edge highlighting is, which turns out is a very basic technique that I did not know.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's like when you take a lighter color and just kind of like put it on the very edge of any flat surface, so it highlights that surface, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you look at a picture of like a quality painted mini, it's there. Yeah, not on any minis I had ever painted before, but on the one that I have done since. Yes.
Yeah. So two things. One, we have a new show on the RPG Academy we've been doing for a few weeks now. On Thursday nights, Dakota from the Shadow of the Book Cabal podcast does an arts and crafts show, primarily painting minis. So he goes like in-depth nerdy about like colors, the color wheel and technique and everything. So if you'd like, to watch someone who's semi-good at it, actually I think he's really good, but I don't know because I have nothing to compare it to, check out Thursday night's RPG Academy Twitch channel.
Man, I set them up, you knock them down.
That's right. Now, the other thing I'll mention is I think I still have it somewhere. When we first started playing D&D back in grade school, we had a Hero Quest set. We never played it. I know there's so many people that talk about how Hero Quest was their gateway. Wasn't for us, but we did have that game, but we just took the minis out of it. And they were very, like they're all purple, like there's a rogue and a barbarian.
Yep.
I painted the rogue, and literally all I did was dip it into black paint and then like shake it off. So it's like Achilles. So like the base is still purple, but everything up is just one solid glob of black. And that was my thief.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, no one's going to catch him.
That's right. He's invisible.
You can never pick him out of a lineup.
Which blob was it?
Right, exactly.
All right. So besides minis, anything else you've been up to?
Our group, a couple weeks ago, we went up, got like an Airbnb in upstate New York and did a gaming weekend, kind of our own mini Academicon, if you will, themed around, we called it Thrillicon, sort of as a joke.
Careful. And so you'll be running Kickstarters before you know it.
As soon as we mentioned that, someone was like, I want to go next year. And I was like, absolutely not. No, I've seen one, I've tread in your footsteps too far. And two, I've seen what it does to a person. I can't, I don't want to be responsible for 8 people in our group. Never mind strangers.
Yeah.
So anyway, we played a few games, had more than a few drinks. I painted some minis. It was a good reminder of the fraternization that's sort of central, the socialization of the hobby. It was a great weekend. So.
All right, and New York Tater wants to know where upstate. I think he wants to stalk you, so if you don't want to, give him specific coordinates, that'd be great.
Okay, we didn't actually even leave Westchester, but upstate from Brooklyn and Manhattan, so that far upstate.
All right, nice. So as for myself, I haven't been doing a whole lot other than the normal stuff I always do. Leaving for vacation Friday, so there's been a lot of just sort of trying to, one more day sort of thing. Heading down to Tennessee for a week. I'm really looking forward to that. I come back on next Friday and immediately turn around and drive to Origins for the weekend. So that's going to be fun. I mean, it will be fun, but
Tennessee, are you going?
I'm sorry?
Where in Tennessee are you going?
Gatlinburg. We have a timeshare down there. It burned to the ground last year. during the big fire thing, and so it's been rebuilt. It's all brand new. Kind of looking forward to going to check it out.
Brand new timeshare. Congratulations.
Yay! Yeah. Let's see. Trying to think if there's any, I haven't really been watching any new TV shows. I haven't been listening to some new podcasts. I'm actually starting to fade away a little bit from RPG podcasts. I think just because I listen to so many, and then I edit our own, so I started getting into other things. I've been listening to Unspooled. I already love How Did This Get Made? It's one of my favorite movie podcasts. And Paul Scheer now does a serious movie review with a lady. I don't know her name, but she must be someone I'm supposed to know.
Right.
But it's they're looking at good movies. They're going to go through the AFI Top 100 and talk about it. And it's really in-depth analysis. It's not like laughs and stuff, though there are some funny parts to it. So I'm really enjoying that one. I started listening to Spontanea Nation, Paul F. Tompkins' improv show. Really, really like that. I fell in love from Thrilling Adventure Hour, which I just recently got through my second listen through of the whole thing. So I'm really enjoying that one. And then I just started I just started listening to Ologies. Allie Ward was on the ID10T podcast, the Chris Hardwick podcast.
Okay.
And so basically every week she interviews a scientist who is an expert at a particular ology, like biology or so on and so forth. So it's just really interesting, in-depth, nerdy conversations about crazy stuff. There was one on sex, linguistics, volcanoes, blood, and particularly pathogens and cancer. So it's not all happy stuff, but it's very interesting. So I really like that. So that's pretty much what I've been up to, is listening to a whole bunch of podcasts.
So where do you listen to most of your podcasts? Is it commuting?
No, my job it's kind of weird. Some days I can listen to podcasts as I work, and other days I can't. It really depends, because a lot of my job is very repetitive, cut and paste, copy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I actually have to read. So an actual play that I really want to pay attention to, I usually save that for the car. And then the comedy movie podcast, I'll do that while I'm working. And so if I have to stop it for 10 minutes while I'm writing an email. So I actually, when I first started the job, I couldn't. For a long time, I wouldn't listen to podcasts. I just listened to music. But now that I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with the job, I guess, and maybe care a little less, I started listening to podcasts. So I listen to 6 hours of podcasts every day.
Oh, geez. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You definitely need more podcast time than I do.
Yeah. I have a lot that I follow.
Yeah.
The actual plays, I usually go in waves. I'll wait for 10 or 15 episodes and then just listen to them all, and rather than have 5 different actual plays at 1 episode each.
Right.
So, yeah. All righty. Trying to check up with chat here. Looks like Targus went to Gatlinburg for Easter vacation with his soon-to-be husband a couple years ago. Yeah, Gatlinburg, it's a fun little place. It's like the redneck Vegas Strip.
Yeah, it's quiet too. It's nice.
It can be.
Oh, is it not?
Well,
it's not in the summer.
It literally, it's a touristy place. So yeah, there's certain times of the year where it does get not rowdy, but it gets busy.
Yeah.
And every 5 feet, there's a fudge store. I don't know if you're aware.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but
no. Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Atlanta, so Gatlinburg was not that far away, right? So we went there a couple times, growing up, and I think we went skiing there a couple times, which is fine. It's the best skiing within driving distance of Atlanta, which is
guaranteed.
Again, exceedingly low bar.
That's right. So we'll move into one of everyone's favorite parts of the show, is where we do our stupid improv games, and
which is fine. It's the best skiing.
I'm hearing you as on an echo.
Yep, I just fixed my phone.
Okay, there we go. So we're going to do 10 things. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with this game, it's an improv game where the focus is on immediacy. So we're going to prompt each other to give us 10 things, 10 examples of TV shows you've been watching or podcasts that you would create or whatever. And the idea is to try to come up with 10 as quickly as possible. So accuracy is not as important as immediacy, so the answers don't have to make sense. It sounds like it should be easy, and yet you will witness us struggle. So, Shane, you are the guest. Would you like to give the prompt first or receive the prompt first?
I think the time-honored tradition is to receive the prompt first, so I will suck it up and receive.
Okay. So, Shane, give me 10 examples of painting techniques that don't exist but you think should.
Oh God. Okay.
And I know nothing about them, so you can list real ones, and I won't know the difference.
um, crossfading.
What?
Just dipping it in a paint well and it works.
2.
Slapping it on with a sticker.
3.
Wishing and it happens.
4.
Fast.
5.
Flawless.
6.
Finger painting.
7. Yeah, that's
miniatures. Good. Yeah. Cheaply.
8.
Oh, the one that you do where the faces actually look like something that resembles a human being.
9. I think accurate is what you're going for there.
Oh, accurate. Oh, sure, fine. Tabletop worthy.
Yay! 10. Those are 10 things. Thank you very much for playing our reindeer games. And now it is my turn to struggle mightily.
Let's do 10 D&D monsters you wouldn't want to meet in a nightclub.
A Medusa.
Fair.
The Gorgon, which is not actually Medusa, it's the metal bull.
Right. 2.
Invisible Stalker.
3.
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Stalker.
4.
Beholder.
That was Monster Manual 4, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's 5.
Yep. Carrion Crawler.
6.
What are they called? The Utga. Whatever the things I always call them shit demons from Made Men. It's the thing that's got the
okay.
Just trust me on
7.
that. Polymorphed Red Dragon.
8.
What's another good one? In a bar. A Mimic.
Right.
Yeah.
You sit on a bar stool and all of a sudden.
Or you go out to the outhouse.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the end. Strahd.
Hey, he's got a stat block.
Exactly. We don't want to visit him anywhere. Nice. And 10, yay! Alrighty, so we'll move into the actual meat and potatoes of the show. We call this used books, and this is where we take a look back at a campaign that we have played in before, either as a DM or as a player. Often these are ones that maybe have failed spectacularly, but not always. And we look into things that maybe we can learn from, lessons learned, deep dive into that. Shane, you're our guest. Do you have a campaign that you can talk about?
I do. It is a game that we have hinted on a bit. We've referenced on Total Party Thrill, but not one that we've ever dove into.
Okay.
So we have kind of made a tour of playing campaigns in defunct settings. So we've played Eberron. That was sort of our first big campaign. We're playing Birthright. We are also playing Dark Sun. And so in our Dark Sun game, we kind of... Have you read The Black Company by chance?
No.
Series of novels by Glenn Cook. It's sort of the original like dark fantasy, right? Low fantasy. So it's about a mercenary company in a fantasy world, and they kind of end up in service of the bad guys, but just trying to honor their contract and get out with their lives, which is pretty much what Dark Sun is, right? Mm-hmm. You're never the good guys in Dark Sun. You're just trying to find some water and the desert for water in a mercenary company. And that was sort of our ethos, right? Was like, we weren't good guys, we weren't bad guys. We took a contract and we honored it. And so our very first contract, probably our third session, we were second level, playing 5th edition, so we're relatively weak. And we fell under the scrutiny of some Templars, who are the defilers of Dark Sun, meaning they're the one of the few characters in the setting that are allowed to use arcane magic, because that like saps the life force from the land, and that's why Dark Sun is a terrible desert. Anyway, so we end up drawing their ire. They follow us out into the wastes. We kind of lure them into what we thought was a trap. And sure enough, like we turn around, fight them midway through the fight. My character, who is like So we all adopted these nicknames, and my nickname was Watcher. He was the standard bearer for the company, right? So like kind of an emotional core, if not an officer. But anyway, so he falls in combat, and I make a mistake throw, rolling a d20 and seeing whether or not I live or die. And oh, can you still hear me? The internet just questioned me.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think it might be my internet actually. We had some problems last night with it as well.
Okay.
I don't know. It seems to be okay now. So, but I mean, you roboted a little bit, but I think it was enough we could kind of figure out what was going on. Your character fell and you rolled some saving throws.
Right. Anyway, so it's a fight going on around me. I kind of fell in the middle of combat, and this Templar starts defiling to cast spells at higher levels, and as Templars do. And each time he defiles, it deals damage to everything around it, which kills my character kind of without a dramatic moment or anything. It was just like, hey, so you just defiled for the third time, and now I'm dead. So thanks. And it was like this moment of like the fight was over and everyone kind of turned and was like, so what's up with Watcher? And I was like, oh, Watcher died 3 rounds ago. Like, you guys keep naming him in the initiative. I just didn't say anything. And so it was like this like dramatic moment of like, oh, it's the first character who died, and in Dark Sun you should expect death, but we didn't. And so it was like, and then the DM is like, well, we knew we were going to kill characters, but like maybe there's some way that you didn't actually die. And I'm just like, no, Watcher's dead, guys. He was a great character for all 3 sessions, but he
will
now.
Be missed.
Right, exactly. And like, we're going to figure out how to replace him because I'm still playing.
Yeah.
But he's dead. And
landfill too.
Yeah, exactly. But it became this like weird like centering thing, right? Where it was like, as the DM felt bad because he had just started this campaign and didn't want to kill off characters that we had put effort into. But at the same time, it was totally fitting with Dark Sun to just casually kill somebody accidentally. And then it became this kind of galvanizing thing where, we would do heroic things as a group, and it was like, well, for Watcher, right? Or like, remember Watcher's sacrifice or whatever, right? So my character kind of lived on way beyond his years, certainly beyond his play sessions.
Actually, that's where the phrase "watch out" came from.
In Athos,
yes.
You go to anywhere in Athos, watch out. That's what it means.
Yep, came straight from that.
The Orphan Company, they're legends.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was this thing where, what could have been this terrible moment, and like I was actually kind of sad, because I like the character. Sort of like the character got to live on through the campaign just by accepting the dice where they lie, and like I feel like sometimes you play games, you get attached to your characters, you become so averse to losing the character that you kind of fudge your dice or do whatever it takes to kind of avoid killing something. And the reward for that character anyway was definitely on the long tail of, the moment happened early, and now like he's a memory, and he sort of lived way beyond what he was as like, a Goliath barbarian level 2.
Okay. So there's a couple things there that I would like to maybe pull out and chat a little bit about. And we've done this in some other formats a little bit, so we don't necessarily get too much into it. But I've been in part of several conversations in various Reddit and Facebook groups on whether the looming possibility of death for a character is fundamentally important to a role-playing game, and specifically D&D. If you go into a campaign and everyone says, you know what, no matter what happens, your characters will not and cannot die, will that game be more, less, or neutral amount of fun if you're in a game where stuff happens? Like, do you think that changes your enjoyment of the game?
So I think death specifically is not that important. But I think it's important that your characters can lose. Right? So there's plenty of games where dying is not the end of the game, right? Or the end of the character, right? But there's other mechanics where losing is the equivalent. I do think that's important. Actually, since you mentioned mundangerous.com, the very first thing I wrote on there was my theory that the reason we have rules in role-playing games is so that the GM is allowed to kill your character so that you can lose. It sets up a set of conditions where that's agreed upon, right? If these series of things happen, then you die. You lose your character. Sorry. Otherwise, it's kind of like Cowboys and Indians, like growing up, right? Where bang, I shoot you. No, you don't.
Yeah, you missed. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I had my shield up.
Right. Well, you're dead. Well, but I'm not. I'm walking around. I'm not dead. Look at me. I'm dancing a jig. Right. Like it's just make believe. So I think having conditions whereby you can lose is important. Death, probably not so much.
So Targus mentions that how you're going to handle death should come up in session 0. So everyone take a drink. So I completely agree. I know this is one of the things that like it gets my goat a little bit whenever I talk about the story of a campaign. That okay, I get it. I try my best to let my characters have agency, and I think that's something I've done more and more of. I've gotten better at it, even though it sometimes causes problems. But it's not a story I'm trying to tell. Like I don't sit down at the table and go, okay, tonight we're gonna play out chapter 3 of this novel I'm writing. Excuse me. Because the players are going to go in directions I never imagined. Things are going to happen I didn't plan for, and I'm okay with that. But comparing a D&D campaign to a story, very rarely, few exceptions, very rarely are you going to get 7 chapters into a 30-chapter book, and one of the characters that you think of as a main character dies. Now, they can go through hardship. Again, they can lose. They can have fundamental changes to who they are as a person, but they usually don't die because dying is a very boring consequence. Once that character's dead, they're basically done. I mean, I think, was it Robert Jordan? The character says that death is a feather, honor is a mountain or something like that. Basically, the fact that when you have to carry on, that's a burden. But death is like, get out of jail free cards. Like, I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like D&D is sort of the same way. I think killing a character is actually just a really boring consequence. Let them live and have to deal with the fact that because they failed, something really bad happened. Let that be a character growth moment, not have roll up a new character who has none of this emotional weight attached because they weren't there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that is true. Certainly when you talk about like very narrow fiction, right? Like The Great Gatsby is not interesting if Gatsby dies midway through. It is certainly interesting because he dies at the end, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's a story about 6 characters and only 6 characters. A typical RPG game is really a shared narrative amongst 6 characters who are all main characters. So you can kind of lose one of them and still replace them. So I don't know that. I mean, I agree. Like, certainly, I think there are good alternatives to death as well. But I don't think death is necessarily like something you must avoid, or that death necessarily has to be the end of a character's story, right? You can keep them just as central to the plot or just as central to the other characters, kind of living on in memoriam or through flashbacks or whatever.
Yeah, I think, again, session 0, everyone take a drink.
Cheers.
Because it has to be agreed upon. I think it should be. It doesn't have to be, but it should be. But there are definitely different ways that you can approach it. You could have the situation, and this came up because of Marvel's Infinity War. Have you watched that movie?
I have not.
Okay. Spoilers, not all the characters.
I only watched the requisite 17 movies.
Oh, okay. See, I've watched all of them multiple times.
Yeah.
So spoiler warning, small spoiler warning for Avengers. I won't ruin much of it, but say that not every character comes out the other side, right?
Fair.
So this has come up because we know there's already more Marvel movies in the works. We know there's a new Spider-Man movie. We know there's a new Black Panther movie. So if those characters happen to be some of the ones that went away, we know that's not going to stick. So people have started saying like it ruins any of the emotional impact if you kill a character knowing that they're going to come back. And the counter argument to that is it still affects the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it can still be an interesting narrative. Isn't my character died, so now I'll bring in a new character that no one knows. But how do the other characters react to the fact that one of theirs has fallen? Do they care? I mean, is it the old standard, I get their boots and no one cares about you and they just strip your body for magic items and leave you there? Or does someone go, I can't believe I let Watcher die. You know, I was so engaged in my battle, I didn't protect them, or, you know, this was like, you know, it can be in the narrative, like maybe they're a ward to you or they're a mentor to you, and they feel like, oh no, you know, Watcher died because I let them get into a dangerous situation that was above them and I blah, 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 blah. That can be very interesting. So I don't think taking death off the table absolutely is a good way to go. But as I like to say in my games, normally you're only going to die if you do something really stupid, really heroic, and usually those are at the same time.
Right.
You know, you kind of have the choice to say, I'm going to sacrifice myself here so that everyone else can get away. It's what I want my character to go through. It's not, oh, I rolled really high this time, you're dead. It's going to be a narrative choice. And then one more thing, I'll let you jump in. I know 13th Age has an interesting mechanic where you don't have to have the DM fudge, which I'm totally cool with, but some people aren't, where they have the thing that you can just take a campaign loss and then run away. So no matter how good or bad the battle's going, you can just say, you know what, we all get away, but the DM's like, okay, well, because you ran away, this happens. And it's a narrative consequence based off of what the scene is. So you have an out that's always there. If you don't want your character to die, you can just, okay, we're going to take the loss here, but we're going to live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably spot on for 80% of games, right? Like that's the exact default attitude that I would recommend. It doesn't cover every game, and there are definitely ways to work around it in games where you want death to be an ever-present threat, right? If that is the looming threat is death, then great. There are techniques that you should use to make that work in your narrative. But yeah, no, I totally agree. For the majority of games, that's a good default attitude.
I know I've talked about this before, but one of my all-time favorite games I've ever played was a one-shot at Gen Con. I think it was my first or second Gen Con. I think it was my second. And we played Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is a notoriously deadly game.
A game with a funnel.
It was a game with a funnel, and that's what we played, where we all started with 3 characters. And at the end of the game, I had one that was left alive, and I was very much attached to that one. And death didn't bother me because I knew that I would still, as a player, get to play. You know, even like if you're like, okay, death is death, like what happened to Watcher, if that had happened 10 minutes into the session, what do you do for the other 3 hours? You know, do they, again, does Landfill 2 show up?
Right.
Or do they try to work you in next session so that it makes more narrative sense? So now you go work on your character while we play for the next 3 hours. That sucks.
Yep.
So the fact that my character died, but I still got to sit at the table, still got to keep playing, it really took the sting of death away from me as a person, but it stayed in the game because we still lost characters.
Yep. Yeah, actually, DCC is a kind of a funny example at our table because we never play games correctly. When we did play DCC, we were chronically attached to our characters and refused to take any risks to let them die and made no progress in the adventure at all. But we're all still on our starting character at still level 0, halfway through a 4-hour adventure after one session.
So extra cautious, I would assume.
Yeah, it was our poor GM for that game is just like, you guys are not getting how this works. Like, but my poor priest, like, he doesn't have any magic. So why would he die?
You don't get how this works.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think some of that attitude, I'm going to be a little bit ageist here, but since I'm old, I can do that. I think it goes back to some of the older attitudes and some of the original concepts that D&D absolutely was a war game. It was very focused on not necessarily combat, but combat was a big part of it. And the idea of death of a character was to improve the player.
Right.
Like every time your character died, it's sort of like that Edge of Tomorrow movie. You learn from it and you got better. And that's where you get the grognards who are like, you can't just say I roll search. You have to tell me how you search, because you as a player should know what to search. But you don't start off knowing that. It's when you don't search like you're supposed to and you miss a clue, or you don't check for traps in the right way and your character dies of a trap, and you just, it's like sped up Darwinism. You died, you learned, you died, you learned, you died. And eventually you got to the point where, okay, I now know how to do all this. But I think that's a mode of play that I detest. Like, I'm sure people love it. Good. Yeah. I hate it. I don't ever want to be in a game where if I don't say I look in the right corner, something happens than if I had said I looked in the left. If it's a gotcha. It's like, right. Oh, I look up, you didn't look down, your character's dead. What? No, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, the last book that got released was Mordenkaniens Tome of Foes. And I think Mordenkainen as a character at the table was retired at like level 8, right? Like, characters in Gygax's game didn't last that long. Like Big B was like level 3, right? Like Draw Mage was like a level 2 mage. It was just like characters were expected to die quickly. So getting to mid levels meant they were retired. Yeah. Like, I want them to live off in the sunset because good Lord knows they won't make it to level 6.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you had like these the sub races like dwarves could only go to 8th level because
right.
You weren't going to get there anyway, so it didn't matter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a totally old school kind of thing. And then, I mean, D&D also had those tournament modules back in the like 80s, right? Where they were meant to be challenging as players. They were sort of like the whole game was a puzzle to be solved as a group. And I mean, that's where you've got your Tomb of Horrors and your Devil Face and Sphere of Annihilation thing, right? Like, they were meant as gotchas to test how good of a D&D player you were, not anything about your character. So
again, it just doesn't fit my personal style. And it's still, like every now and then, it's just like, again, 4th edition. I don't think it's awful. Some people do. But like, if someone said, you know what, I just want to run 4th edition tonight, I'll say, okay, sure, we'll have fun with it. Oh,
yeah. If you make my character, I'll play 4th edition tomorrow. But I'm not going to make another character.
Right, but it's not like I don't want to play a campaign. And I don't want to play that style. But if you're like, okay, tonight we're going to play a death module just to see how far your characters get. Okay, I'm game. Let's just do it. But it's not a type of campaign that I'm going to want to sustain over and over again. I'm going to lose interest. Because I personally feel like there's a bit of an opposite, and maybe it's just the contrary nature that I have in me, where rather than if I lose a character becoming more cautious, I will become more bold. Oh, okay. I died because I didn't open the door. Well, F you, let's try this. And I'm just going to start doing increasingly dumber things and just start cycling through characters because I don't care anymore. Right. You've taken away my reason to care, so I'm just going to go completely that way and go, all right, well, these are all interchangeable now.
Right, and then that tonal dissonance kills the whole game, right? Like, it makes it less fun for everybody because now, like, you've lost the buy-in that originally made you interested in your character and in the game.
Yep, and absolutely, you have that one player. It's the same if, the one person wants to, always wants to fight when someone is trying to negotiate or someone wants to sneak and they just want to charge in. If you're not kind of in the same tone as everyone else, it can cause problems. And same thing, if everyone else is super cautiously afraid of, they don't want to alert the room B of goblins before we kill room of A of goblins, because then we'll have twice as many goblins. And I'm like, yo, mother effers, come get us. They're not going to enjoy that game.
Right.
All right, had a couple comments pop in. First of all, we got to take a drink because New York Tater also mentioned Session Zero. This is why you should never drink alcohol on the show.
I planned ahead this time.
So what he said specifically is if you don't actually cover death in the session that shall not be named, that you need to have like a quick conversation about it before it actually happens. Like a little sidebar. It could be like if you're moving into the part of the game that's really dangerous, or maybe, combat's going the other way, might take a 5-minute, like, okay, what happens if I roll an natural 20 on my next attack? You're going to die. Are you okay? So you still want to talk about it before it actually happens. So there's a couple other things that I was trying to think. When I think we kind of touched on it is that it's buying into the game that you're playing. You all agreed to play Dark Sun. You knew that Dark Sun is the type of game where that can happen. You're going to play where you can't really play the heroes because there are really no heroes. It's a bleak desert wasteland, and everyone's out to kill everyone, and everyone's out for their own, that kind of thing. So if you're going to play that game, if you don't buy into the whole package, then it kind of dilutes the setting in a way. So then why are you playing the setting?
Right. And that was my whole thing as a player too. It was like, I didn't want to lose the character. Right. And I got that the DM didn't intend to kill my character either. But if he had walked back that death, then death would have been meaningless entirely. Dark Sun, right? Like it would have just undermined Dark Sun. And so when, a couple months later, we had a fight go sideways and we lost 3 characters, like now what, right? Like we were already prepared to like accept that as a group. And so we were able to move on. And, we realized that the story of our game was not the story of these 6 characters. It was the story of these 200 characters that made up our mercenary company. And we just played a few of them at a time. And it's one of my favorite games that I've ever played in and am still playing in, right? Just because of that, right? It's this very cool shared narrative that sort of spans a lot of different focus because we recognized that and leaned into it.
And you can get into some weird power dynamics depending on, the relationships of the players, the DM, and as a group. That, like, session 3, Shane's character is supposed to die, but I really don't want him to die, so, it's not like you're fudging behind the screen no one knows. Because, again, I think that's fine. But you can't let people know you're doing it. But let's say I'm very subtle. It's different. If I just say, oh, I didn't want to kill your character, let's just say your character's not dead, okay? And then in session 7, Steve's character dies, and we're like, nah, we're far enough along now. Steve, you're dead.
Yeah, it's like, well, hey, he got a mulligan.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here?
Right. So then even though, like, from a narrative sense, it may make sense that you're far enough along, or this was like a dramatic moment where, okay, yeah, it does make sense for you to die here because that's going to propel us to the next part of the story versus, oh, you were just walking through the desert and tripped over your own, feet and then died. It's a little
which actually is not that unsurprising in Dark Sun. Like the exhaustion rules are very brutal. I'll just say that crossing a desert, not that easy.
Yeah. So do you think there's ever been a Dark Sun campaign that was like Total Recall, where at the end they actually solved Dark Sun and brought water back?
They've announced that there's going to be new campaign settings for 5th edition. It would not surprise me if that were one of the campaigns. If Dark Sun was released and they released an adventure path whereby you somehow restored Dark Sun, that feels like a very 5th edition thing to me.
So what if? So again, I'm just throwing this out here, and it would have to be secretive, of course. But what if there was a way that when you killed a defiler, that undid everything they had done?
I mean, I like it.
So then the more defilers you kill, the better you make things.
See, what we would do is just become the worst defilers of all, use defilement to kill all the other defilers, and then,
right.
Net neutral.
Well, I mean, there would have to be, there'd have to be something there, but just somehow,
right.
The idea of that, you return that power that was used back to the earth and it restores, it's like the opposite of defiling. But I'm sure in the history of Dark Sun, there are plenty of defilers that have died of natural causes. So did that energy go somewhere else? Blah, blah, blah. But I do like the idea of like being in a fight and you're fighting a defiler and you kill them, and all of a sudden there's like a plant just grows up from the blood where they spilled on the desert. And you're like, what the F is that? And then you just start putting it together.
So and it's tough for me to know for sure because this is a little bit wrapped up in the canon of our own game, but I think there is actually a canonical way for druidic magic to help restore life in Dark Sun. It's just not scalable, right? Like, because it's the good versus evil, right? Like evil is super easy. Defiling is always way easier, and anybody who casts arcane magic or happens to be, have that gift can just do it. So you'll never tip the balance, right? But I think there is a canonical way to actually do that, and it seems like a perfectly valid late game Dark Sun thing to me. To like, yeah, we've toppled a few sorcerer kings, like, we're trying to figure out some mass regeneration spell or something. Like, yeah, totally. If you want to turn Dark Sun from very grim to noble and bright, sure.
It feels sort of like a mid-budget fantasy movie.
Oh yeah.
Like at the last scene, you stab the sword through the dragon's heart, and then the whole city just starts to turn green. It spreads out from there.
Isn't that the end of Lady Hawk?
It's been a long time since I've seen Lady Hawk.
Doesn't something happen, like something silly and obscenely positive happen at the end of Lady Hawk? I feel like something like that is that. Yeah.
Hopefully someone in chat can tell us. 'Cause I just remember that like during the day she's a hawk and during the night he's like a wolf or something, and they're star-crossed lovers. They can
No.
never be together.
I slept through that movie day in like 8th grade, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time. So Targris mentions that Dark Sun would be a fantastic setting for him, but he also wants to see Dragonlance. Surprise, surprise! I hope they bring out Eberron.
Yeah. I would rather see Eberron before Dragonlance. The fact that Kender were not mentioned, as far as I can remember, in that little small folk section of Tome of Foes makes me wonder if Dragonlance is out.
I know, was it Joe Manganiello or however the F you say his name? The
werewolf guy.
He's working on like a Dark Sun script for a movie. So he loves, or not Dark Sun, sorry, Dragonlance. So I know he loves it and he's pushing for it. But I really, fingers crossed, hope it's Eberron, because again, I'm actually getting ready to probably run an Eberron game somewhat soon. So I would love to have some 5th edition version of that.
And Keith Baker's the best. He deserves all the good things to happen.
He is. He does. And I was very privileged and honored to be a part of that podcast of Foes recently. And I sent Greg Tito a message. We have a DM going back and forth. I was like, if you ever do anything Eberron, like I get there's a billion other podcasts that would have loved to have participated in this, and I'm lucky. But if you ever get to do Eberron, I want to be in that list.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, that sounds cool. Non-committal.
Right.
but I really, really hope that if they actually end up doing something similar for an Eberron setting, I would be able to participate. If not, we probably still will, like, if it comes out as like a campaign setting, we will play that. Absolutely.
Should we just abandon the rest of the format and talk about how much we love Eberron? Because like we made a whole podcast about it.
No, again, we probably could, but I think we may have wringed enough out of used books here to close shop. Always goes back to the session that shall not be named, making sure everyone's on the same page. If you're going to play a game that has some sort of setting specific, ideologies, buy in. If you're, it doesn't have to be a setting, but if you're going to play all rogues who are like an Ocean's 11 style gang, don't play the one character who's like, no, I'm a barbarian, I'm just going to do this stuff.
Yeah, I'm in heavy armor.
Unless
I'm a
everyone's
paladin.
Okay with that and they think it's funny that the rest of us have to constantly get you out of trouble. Like if that's something people enjoy, that's okay. But it's when you're not on the same team. You're off of tempo from everybody else. You're the one guy who's like a beat and a half every time, and no one else can dance to the rhythm because I'm white. I'm sorry. I had flashbacks to grade school. But actually, just everybody get on the same page. All right, so let's move on. So our next thing we like to do here is everyone's favorite part of the show, where we truly make fools of ourselves, and that is the improv game, Where Have My Fingers Been? So if you're new to the show, basically we're going to give each other prompts, and using those prompts, we will then create a scene with at least 2 people, sometimes 3, that are going to have a little scene back and forth with the prompt that we give them. The idea is to try to have a beginning, middle, and an end, and funny voices are bonus. So Shane, once again, you are the guest. Do you want to give me a prompt first or receive a prompt first?
I am terrified of this game. The last time I was in detention, I hated this game.
but everyone who watches loves it.
Yeah. Well, okay, here we go. Give me the prompt first so that you can one-line your way out of mine.
Okay, so first, you got to sing the song, though. Do you remember the song?
Where have my fingers been? Where have my fingers been?
Your fingers have been at the latest Dungeons & Dragons announcements and found out that Dragonlance was the new setting over Eberron.
Hey, did you hear that they're doing Dragonlance instead of Eberron? I can't believe that's true. There must be a lot of old people who voted for that. I think they're just fans of Kender. Nobody's fans of Kender, kids. Well, secretly I'm a Kender. Please die in a fire.
And that's where your fingers have been. That was great. That was so good. So easy. You nailed it. And you're frozen. Okay.
That's everything I know about Dragonlance.
Yeah, Kender stink. And there's no gods, but there is a god, and there's like dragon people. Yeah.
Yeah. Not dragonborn, but something like dragonborn-like.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. They turn to stone in the sunlight like trolls or something. I don't know.
Oh, good.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway. Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
I had all of that song to think of this.
Yeah. Gotta figure out the camera here. There we go.
Your fingers have been stuck in Mordenkaniens laboratory for a little too long.
What? It's been like 3 years. Yeah, but I mean, it's not that bad. You know, he just every now and then he pulls us out of the jar and he like shakes us a little bit, and you know, he kind of plucks a hair. Or, dude, I was circumcised. And that's where my fingers have been. Fantastic. Okay. And then we'll move into the almost last part of the show. This is Cryptozoology, and this is where we take a look at a monster primarily from D&D, but it doesn't have to be. And this is a monster that we may have used in the past or when we want to use in the future. Try to come up with maybe some interesting creative ways. Shane, once again, you are the guest. So is there a monster you would like to talk about tonight?
There is, sticking with the theme of new shiny things in D&D 5th edition, which are old shiny things from D&D 4th edition. The Sorrowsworn.
Battlestar Galactica, this has all happened before. It will all happen again.
Yeah, so the Sorrowsworn, which are on page 231 of Mordenkaniens Tome of Foes. I guess they're a Shadowfell creature, like a monster, I think, from 4th edition. They're basically like the Shadowfell is this very like gray and dim, melancholy kind of place, very bleak, and then that spawns these embodiments of these like negative, bleak emotions. So there's actually 5 monsters: the angry, the hungry, the lonely, the lost, and the wretched.
Aren't those the Teletubbies?
Yeah, no, they are.
Okay.
They're all color coordinated as well, and they have their own symbols, so you can quickly identify them if you're stuck in the Shadowfell.
Fantastic. So what is it about this creature that interests you? So I assume this is something you've not used before in your own games.
No.
So what is it, when you were looking through the book, you're like, oh, I want to use that. So what is it that kind of grabbed your attention here?
So I like that they're thematic monsters. Like just trying to make D&D a little bit more interesting than just randomly grabbing monsters out of the monster manual, right? If you're in a place or have an NPC or something where like this theme of this negative emotion fits, like I'm imagining like, the 16-year-old emo wizard who just goes a little too deep into necromancy accidentally spawns these like monstrosities, right? Something like that.
Okay.
I like the idea of monsters that are themed around like the emotions that you can draw into your character's campaign.
Now, as written, these are Shadowfell monsters or Feywild.
Right. Shadowfell, which I don't know exactly how that relates to the Feywild, to be honest.
I think it's like a triumvirate. They like all 3 overlap: Prime Material, Feywild, Shadowwild, but I don't really know.
Yeah.
So I do like the idea of, if I have a campaign that goes into the Shadowfell, that it's going to feel different there. Like, I don't want it to just be, it's just D&D, but it's like dark all the time, or it's like, it's like during an eclipse the whole time, but everything else is exactly the same. So I like the idea of there being something tied there, sort of like, again, like the emotions that, the characters themselves, if they're feeling angry or lonely or scared, that can manifest in some way, or maybe even just like summon. Like they're drawn towards this beacon of anger, and it just attracts them. Mm-hmm. But I'm not really a big. I don't know that I've ever used the Shadowfell in my game. So I like maybe taking the idea into, quote unquote, a regular game, Prime Material playing, I guess, where this could be like a challenge at the heart of a dungeon, where maybe the characters get separated, and each of the characters has a particular type of this creature. Maybe you have to make up another one if it doesn't fit exactly, that they then have to confront one-on-one. But if they fall, they don't die, because we're going to talk about, you don't have to die, but they are almost like possessed in a way, and it like magnifies those emotions. So when the group comes back together, you could have almost like the Thing style game where 2 of them are infected with this power that makes them really, really angry or really, really scared, and they have to figure that out.
Yeah, I like almost like a long-term kind of like conditional dominate, right? Where if certain things happen, you might just be dominated by the spirit who has overcome you once before.
Yeah, so it could be something where it's not super obvious. Oh, like, oh, great, Steve's possessed again. But, you just, the thing where you pass notes to the player, you're like, in this situation, you're going to overreact a little bit. You're going to be
Right.
like super angry really quick here. And maybe an NPC that's a friend of yours, you just like, grab them, slam their head against the table and like, no, you're going to tell us what we need to know. Totally like crazy, but not like kill anybody crazy.
Right.
So I like how you could have that be part of the game. Sort of a very interesting twist. Maybe the players know what's going on, but their characters don't. But I could see that being an interesting part of like a long-term campaign, maybe like halfway to 3/4 of the way through. And then just before you get to the finale, you got to figure that out first, or you have to deal with it in the final battle.
And I know that you are Professor Fluff.
I am.
But from a crunch perspective, they're pretty cool in the way that they've kind of like interpreted what like being lost or lonely or hungry means.
Okay.
Like the lonely and the lost both have like these grapple attacks, so they're like try to grab you, right? Like the lost like doesn't know where he's going, like this seems solid, I must hold on to it. Whereas like the lonely is like an embrace, like I just want to bring you closer to me, like I just don't want to be alone.
It's
and that like
a creepy hug,
right? And then that like consumes you with sadness, right? The hungry is like a bite, so that's not all that exciting. And angry, of course, is, I don't know, I think that's pretty well represented across D&D with barbarians, whatever. But I really like how they've kind of created a stat block that sort of mirrors the emotion that they're meant to. So even if you had multiple of them in the same encounter, they would feel distinct, right? Like this one hugs you and just won't let go, and this one thrashes out at you and is like bitter and angry at you.
Have you watched the Magicians TV show on Sci-Fi?
I have not, but I've heard good things.
It's really good. Like the first season, like I was told it was good, and it got a lot better in the second season. So the first season, like 3 or 4 episodes in, it was only okay. Then it gets really good. Like I love it. It's probably one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And there's something happens. I think it's in the second or third season. I'm a little bit of spoilers. Actually, now I think it was the first season. So the characters are trying to do a particular type of magic, and it's very dangerous. And part of the reason why it's dangerous is if you have any sort of emotion, it can cause the magic to become corrupted. So you have to do what's called clear or clean. So some of the characters decide just to practice really hard and learn how to do it clean, and the others use a spell that removes their emotions. So they are able to remove their emotions. They put them like in a little bottle, and they are able to practice the spell, and then they drink their emotions back, and they have these flood of emotions. So I like the idea of maybe using these monsters as not as something you have to kill, but maybe they're guarding something, and the only way to get through is you have to divest yourself of that emotion. So that becomes the trick is, how do I remove sadness from my mind? Or, and again, it could be loneliness or anger or fear or any sort of emotion, love. Like that's the thing, is it's not fighting the thing, it's we have to get by it. So to do that, we have to do something else to remove my fear. And then what happens when you get through it?
Oh, I love that in the reverse, like as a devil's bargain, right? Like the devil offers to remove anger or sorrow or whatever, right, from a character, to do you that favor of no longer being hampered by this terrible negative emotion. And then, obviously your own anger is what you have to overcome in some way of breaking the contract or whatever, right? Like I love that kind of poetic justice too.
So the one thing, it didn't happen in Magicians, and I really thought it was going to, so I would want to use it here, is if they got the bottles mixed up.
Oh.
So I drink, so it doesn't change my personality, but I now have your emotions. So like if you were in love with a different NPC, then I am now in love with that NPC. So it could just cause some kind of interesting role play situations when the emotions get mixed up, or it could be like the old 60s Batman thing where you drop them and they all get mixed together.
That feels like a very millennial version of like the old like cursed items that switch your gender.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels like the modern version of that, right? Where like you get to play as this person now, just how they feel.
Yeah. I like it. I think that could be very interesting.
No, I do too.
Anything else for the Sorrowsworn? Anything that you might want to do with them in the future?
No, I would just point out that they're also convenient as a set of monsters because they have a good range of CRs. They're like 7 to 13, which means you can use them for a wide range of different character like power levels. Okay. So I like that about them too. That's my like general rule is more useful than less.
Oh, that makes sense for someone like you who likes to pay attention to numbers.
Yeah, well, you know.
Yeah, you're that person.
I'm sorry.
All right, so actually, it looks like I was just showing the angry. So there's a couple other images of the other ones.
Yeah, the wretched are actually really funny because they just attach to you and then just drain you. Like they only attack once, and then you have to like use your action to get rid of them. So you have to like shake them off. They're like the ticks of the Shadowfell,
or like the Sturge in a way.
Yeah, but you know, less right.
All right. Cool. Well, that is the Sorrowsworn from Mordenkaniens Tome of Foes. So hopefully anyone out there listening, you now have some ideas that you can take to your campaigns and terrorize your players with. So we will now move into the absolute last part of the show, and this is our audience Q&A. There's usually a little bit of a delay, so while we're waiting for any questions that might come up, Shane, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
You can find me on Total Party Thrill on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or TotalPartyThrillCast.com. And I am on Twitter @Mundangerous.
So have you got on iHeartRadio yet? I've been hearing that is the new thing that everyone's joining, but I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to do that either. I just got early access to YouTube Music.
Oh.
So I don't know. Maybe that will also have podcasts, but yeah, I don't know. It's great for our stat tracking to have more services and not less.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So while we're waiting for anybody who has any questions, and again, to the audience, it doesn't have to be roleplay related, though it certainly makes sense if it is. It can be for Shane, for myself, or for both of us. Any questions that you have, please shoot. There's one question that we like to ask everyone, and I don't think we were doing this the last time you were on. So if so, then you can have your answers ready. But if not, Shane Smith, if you were an action figure, what would be the 3 accessories that come into with your package? I said that really weird, but I hope you know what I mean.
Well, first of all, if I were a proper action figure, my package would be very neutral,
yep.
And inoffensive in the packaging.
Yes.
Oh man, I mean, sadly, it's probably like iPhone, with like the color changing screen or something.
Okay.
Man, I definitely have like my my gaming bag, my backpack full of like gaming stuff. It's got some books and like dice and that sort of thing in it. What else? Sadly, I probably have a line of accessories, like of you can just replace my clothes, like jeans and shorts and like t-shirts and hoodies and polo shirts and just hats. Yeah, sadly that's probably my 3rd accessory is just a whole line of accessories that you can customize with. Yeah,
nice. Well, they have those paper dolls where you just like slide them underneath the new clothes or something. That would be you. Actually,
that's a little bit cheaper to produce, so that sounds more like me.
Nice. Alrighty. Are you going to Origins this year?
I am not. I've never been to Origins.
I thought you went one year. I thought I met you there. Maybe not.
No. So I do Gen Con every year, but that's my like only regular trip to the Midwest. Well, actually, I guess Academaniacs is in the Midwest too, right? So
that's semi-regular.
Well, okay. All right. So last year I missed my flight, and it was like a nightmare to try and get another one. LaGuardia is terrible. They're doing a bunch of construction, and it was a disaster. Anyway, yeah. So I missed Academaniacs last year, and it was like it bummed me out. I got to read about it on Twitter, and it was miserable.
We did we didn't call it a Catacant, but it was sort of along those lines. We did our Catacon line this year, which went pretty well. I was a little disappointed. We had more GMs than players, which surprised me. But we had so many people volunteer to run games, then half of them didn't have any players, or we only had 1 or 2, and we had to move them into other games. So I think we're going to try to do that every year, somewhere around May or June. Have a mid-year Catacon sort of thing, and maybe hopefully it'll grow as well.
What what does an online convention look like? Because I mean, game conventions are, I don't think most players have been to conventions, I would guess, right? Like that's still a pretty small community of people who do that. So like what does an online convention look like even?
So I've never been to another online convention. I know there's a couple like VirtuaCon that happens every year that probably is much better organized than what we did. But essentially, we just asked a lot of people within the network, some of our patrons to some of our friends that agreed to run some games, and then we sort of scheduled them in a system, and they had to go in and buy tickets. The tickets were all free, but you still had to like buy them to keep, make sure we didn't oversell a seat or whatever.
Right.
So you just go, basically we had an Academaniacs line Eventbrite store. Each of the games were there, how many tickets. And so people would just buy a ticket, and then we coordinated if it was a Roll20 game or just as Google Hangouts. And basically we had slots that you would jump in and play a game from 6 to 10 or 7 to 11. And other than that, it was just a game. I ran mine all like theater of the mind. Like I normally run a game. I know some people use Roll20 and got into all that kind of stuff.
So it's kind of like a very narrow window for a looking for group thread on Reddit.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, I think that's a great way to make it more accessible, because like that is one of the cool things is like I'm lucky that I have the flexibility that I can travel to Gen Con each year, and I can travel to Academicon and meet the people that surround your podcast, or meet the designers or writers of the games that I'm passionate about. But not everybody can. So it's cool that you've made that more accessible.
So hopefully just next year it'll be a little more successful, but yeah, we'll see. So Shortmanian 444 jumped in, mentioned that a Catacon line was awesome. Thank you for that. And then asked, what did you think of the new WotC book announcements, Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage? What were your thoughts?
I am a little bit biased because our friend James Introcaso was one of the writers on those books. So I hope they are fantastic because I like him and I think he does great work. So I am very positive on the outlook. That said, I am way more interested in Dragon Heist than I am in Big Dungeon in the Underdark.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, James certainly is a friend of the show. I think he's an awesome dude, and I'm glad to see he's been able to do more and more stuff. Also, Dyson Logos, who I don't know personally, but I hang out with him on Facebook. Seems like a cool dude. He did all the maps, so that's kind of a cool thing. And what I like about it is it really seems to be fulfilling the promise that WotC made a couple years ago, that they were going to start pulling creatives from the hobby, like the community of DM's Guild. And this is the first time that's really happened where, and it's a small select group, which it should be, but I mean, I'm sure the people that when they were asked were ecstatic, and rightfully so. So I think that's awesome and very cool. I have no desire to run an Underdark campaign. I actually am not a fan of Forgotten Realms. It's a very boring setting for me. It's like generic fantasy, but if I'm gonna do that, I'll just make my own.
Right.
But I do like the idea of the single one-shot dungeon crawls, because I think that's something 5th edition doesn't really have. I know 4th edition had the dungeon delves, which were a big 2-hour 3-level dungeons. They had all these different versions. So I like the idea of having a book I can pull out and just throw a dungeon together, and we're going to do a little dungeon crawl using 5th edition. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. So I would be very interested in that book over the other, but I hope WotC sends me one of both.
Well, I would say 5th edition does have those. There's a lot of 5th edition content on DM's Guild. And even if you only want WotC approved stuff, the Adventurers League modules are mostly written by community members, but published by WotC. So that is more accessible than it ever has been in a prior edition. So it's not entirely fair to say that there's no one-shots available. That said, Dragon Heist seems like it's structured in a very reusable way and a very unique way. So just to see that cross matrix of enemies and locations and reasons for a heist and really cool, possibly very innovative way of doing an adventure. So I want to definitely check that out. But yeah, same. I hope to receive a copy of both.
That would be great. Though personally, I still hope Eberron comes out next.
Yeah.
All right. So one last time.
Yeah, same.
Anyone in the audience that has any questions that you'd like to ask myself or Shane? Shane, anything you want to talk about while we're waiting for any possible questions?
For people who are like me and unlike you, who are interested in Warhammer 40K, they've just announced the pre-order for Wrath and Glory, which is the reboot of the 40K role-playing line by Ulysses Games, Ulysses Spiele, which is a German company. The game's in English. But anyway, so that pre-order is available now, and it's kind of being run like a sort of crowdfunding kind of thing, where like they're announcing more things that are unlocked in like the pre-order sets as it goes on. So,
all right. So Short Mania 444 talked about the announcements. So they have basically said there will be more books this year. They will be setting books, but they have not said what settings they will be. They've sort of teased. I think that's where like the Dark Sun, the Eberron, the Planescape, and the what was the other, Dragonlance. Like, you know, people are camping out and voicing their opinions, but I don't think there's been any direct conversation about anything. Though they have said multiple times that they always like to plant little seeds and hints in the books for what the next books might be. So including the Gith and the Githyanki and the Githzerai, that leans very heavily into a Spelljammer type of campaign.
Or Planescape.
Which again, I kind of conflate those two in a way.
I do too. Like, to me, like Spelljammer is just Pirates of Planescape.
It's how you get to Planescape. Yeah, it's
right.
Like that's the ship to get you there.
Right.
I was on Twitter the other day having a conversation about this, and somebody brought up Eberron, and we were chatting. And I don't know who this person is. I don't know if this information is garbage or not. But they said that Merle somewhere had been quoted as saying, "I would be very surprised if we're not working with Keith Baker next year." And he said that in 2017. So it sounds like there's a really good chance that it is going to be Eberron.
I think that's great. Like Eberron is my favorite like setting, period. Even more so than Planescape. But yeah, I mean, just reading the tea leaves, I would say I'd probably handicap it at Planescape more likely than Eberron. I don't know, maybe Dark Sun, but probably Dragonlance, especially if that's real, that Joe Manganiello is trying to get a movie made for Dragonlance. Like, it would be positively TSR-ish to have like a hit feature film in a setting and not have a book available, as they did with Planescape when Planescape Torment came out and like blew away the like computer RPG community, and there were no Planescape books left on shelves.
Yeah. Why are there no 5e games?
Well, there was that one, and it was like miserable, right?
Yeah. Well, there was I think it was Temple of Elemental Evil came out like, I think it was 3.5 rules. It was a really fun game. Just give me that, but updated to 5th edition.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know.
And then talking somewhat about Kickstarters, I might actually be getting one of my Kickstarters I've been waiting almost 2 years for.
Oh yeah.
So I backed the Sentinels of the Multiverse Ultimate thing. So it's like a giant freaking box that will hold all the cards, every expansion, everything. It's like got, it's designed with all the art and everything. So at the time that I ordered this, I was playing Sentinels of the Multiverse fairly regularly.
Okay.
I also, like, you got a bunch of the boxes. Like, it was basically you got everything. Again, I already owned a couple. I thought, well, these will be cool Catacon prizes. So I'll keep mine, and then when I get the duplicates, I'll give them away to Catacon. I don't play Sentinels of the Multiverse anymore. I've kind of lost interest in playing it at all. And they kind of hosed me. I mean, it wasn't intentional, but the way when they sent those out, because they went ahead and sent all the stuff that had been printed, but they were like reprinted, so they were like dual boxes. So it worked like half and half, so I couldn't just give them away, or I myself did not have them. So it totally just did not come together as Michael had intended. But the last update said that they are on a boat from China heading this way. They should be at the warehouse end of June, early July. Probably we'll have them sometime around August.
And will that get you to play Sentinels of the Multiverse again?
Probably not.
Yeah. So what they've said is take it out of our warehouse and put it on your shelf. But either way, it's sitting in storage.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing, because you probably know this about me. I'm a little OCD. So I'm kind of excited about going through and organizing all the cards, and like put them in there so they all go the right way, and making sure I have all of them. I only have a little checklist. But I don't plan on taking that box to a catacon. Like I take all my stuff, but that box is just going to break. There's no way that box will survive the trip.
Right.
So I'm then going to have to take all those cards out, put them in other boxes, go to a catacon for 3 days, and then reorganize them back in the box yet again. So I've already kind of just know that's going to happen.
So I will say your organization of the Marvel card game. What is that one?
It's Legendary.
Marvel Legendary, right?
See, that was a double because it's my organization, Legendary.
That has spoiled me. I refuse to play anybody else's copy of it because yours is so easy to grab everything because it's so neatly organized in that big box.
Yep, it's pretty much the best way to do that, I think.
It seems like it's already hard enough to find things when they're neatly labeled. I can't imagine any other way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean that was necessity more than because I do love that game and I played it a lot, and it's such a hassle to put together and take apart. I had to find a way to make it easier. And then I went just like everything I do. I went a little overboard and kind of over produced it with color coded cards. Like the Fantastic Four is blue and white, Deadpool's red and black, and so like each thing has their own card that separates the cards behind it, but then they're also color coded. So yeah. But
yeah, I didn't pick up on all that because I'm obviously very bad at that game. Or very bad at setting up that game.
Yes, it's a bear to set up. There's a digital version it's been out for about a year now that is not flavored Marvel because they don't have the license for the digital version, but it's exactly the same game with just different art. So it's like generic fantasy goblins and warriors and wizards, but it's basically Marvel Legendary, and it's on the app, so I play that all the time at work.
Oh, speaking of board game apps, actually, Catan Universe just got released, and I have been playing that. I kind of like it. I don't play a lot. Like I have some friends that aren't deep into board games, but somehow they have played Settlers of Catan, and that's like the game that we play. So I play probably more Catan than most people in the hobby do. But the app is like good. It's got a good difficulty level to where it's challenging, but like not unfair.
Gotcha. I've never played Catan.
That is probably fine at this point.
Okay. I bought it for the Catacon library because I know it's a staple. And I went through and organized all the pieces and parts. Never played it. It's a great game for its time, you know, but that has sort of been moved on from. So that's okay. All right. Before we wrap up, I will once again announce to the same people who've already heard this a bunch of times, we do have a Twitter following drive going, and when we get to 500, not Twitter, Twitch followers, we won't get to 500. We're at like 280 something right now. I will randomly draw one of those people, and they will get a free copy of the Dungeons and Dragons Rule Cyclopedia, the print-on-demand version from Drive-Thru-RPG. This is a book that was very near and dear to my heart as a kid, all the way up through college. I loved this version of the game, and then when I got really dumb and sold all my D&D stuff when I got married and thought I was beyond all that, and I've slowly been buying it all back and spending more on it than I did originally. But I never got this one back because online it's like $75 for like an original version, but through Drive-Thru-RPG now it's like $28 plus shipping. So.
Is that the first edition Dungeons and Dragons?
No. So this is the Rules Cyclopedia, which is sort of a hybrid basic / advanced.
Okay.
That was like streamlined rules for all the different versions of basic that were put out. But it also has a few updated things in there. It's a one book fits all, has everything you need: treasure, spells, monsters, character creation. So it's like basic plus.
Okay.
And
so
it's also the Mistra setting is part of this as well.
So where does that fall in like the edition timeline? Is that part of first or second edition?
It would be pre-first. So it's like basically basic, and then you have first edition, second edition. This was like basic plus, but it came out after, I believe after first, maybe even after second. I don't know if it has an original. So it came out in 1991 is when the book actually came out.
Okay, so that would have been during second edition.
I think so.
because that was about when the core rules CD-ROM that got me started on D&D came out.
Yeah, so it was basically a cleaned up version, streamlined of the old Basic, because Basic was like had Basic, then Master, and then like Epic, and they had like 5 different books that you had to buy and all together. And this is like all of it together.
It's almost like TSR wasn't a good marketing company.
Almost like they were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So New York Tater's throwing some salt in my wounds that he got his in 1991. He still has it.
Very rude.
Yeah. You could have bought mine used. I sold it in like 2002 or something like that.
And you can't get that at Gen Con or something? Like in any of the used dealers?
I've never found it there. I looked online, several times, and the cheapest I could ever find it was like $75. So I wasn't going to do that.
All right. Well, at Gen Con this year, I will dive through all of those like boxes and boxes of things looking for the rule cyclopedia for you.
Yeah, I have one now. But seriously, I think anyone who plays D&D, even if you never play this game, I think this is something that should be in your library. I just think it's like just history, and it's awesome. So
does it have DM advice in it?
I do not think so. I mean, I don't think it has.
So it's not like a full DMG. It's just just distilled rules content.
Yeah, basically it's all the player stuff, all the monster stuff, all the treasure stuff. And I think there's some setting stuff built in. I don't think it has any like DMG type stuff. Oh,
gotcha.
Well, maybe it has a little bit. It talks about campaigning, it has the planes of existence. So I think it's more like lore. I don't know if there's that kind of stuff. But absolutely, if you have a chance, pick it up. All right. Well, I think that will do it. Shane, thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. Everyone in chat, thank you. We actually have more people now than we started, so sorry you jumped in at the end. But you can watch this episode and all the others on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/TheRPG Academy. Any final words before we sign off, Shane?
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You keep begging to get on our show. I'll keep saying yes.
Eventually.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank everyone, and good night.